The pages of the Quran fell open, and the thing living in our walls started screaming, not with a voice, with the sound of wood splintering, glass cracking, and something ancient being dragged into light it couldn't bear. Why did a family's simple Quran recitation force a jinn to reveal itself after hiding for months? What did this invisible creature do the moment the first verse was spoken that made a grown man drop to his knees in terror? This story will chill you to your core and change everything you thought you knew about what listens when we recite. So stay until the end, because what happened in that house in rural Pakistan is a warning we all need to hear. My name is Yusuf, and I'm telling you this not for entertainment, but because every Muslim household needs to understand the unseen power of the words we sometimes take for granted. Before we continue, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and leave a comment telling me which country you're watching from. Your engagement helps us share more stories like this. 6 months before the Quran incident, my cousin Amina and her husband Farhan moved into their first home in a village outside Lahore. It was old, a century at least, with thick walls, high ceilings, and that particular smell old houses have, like dust and forgotten time. "It's perfect," Amina had said, walking through empty rooms that echoed, "just need some love." But from the first night the house didn't feel right. Small things at first. Doors they'd locked would be open in the morning. The temperature in one room, the back bedroom, stayed cold even in summer heat. Water taps would run on their own at 3 a.m. "Old plumbing," Farhan insisted. "Old hinges, we'll fix it." But Amina felt it, that sensation of being watched, of not being alone even when Farhan was at work. She'd be cooking and sense movement in her peripheral vision, a shadow that shouldn't be there, gone when she turned. "You're imagining things," Farhan said, but his voice carried doubt. Then came the night Amina woke to find all the kitchen cabinets open, every single one, and the chairs arranged in a perfect circle in the middle of the room. She hadn't heard a sound. That's when they called me. I'm not an imam or an exorcist. I'm just a school teacher who memorized Quran as a child. But in our family, when something feels wrong, I'm the one they call. "Yusuf Bhai," Amina's voice trembled on the phone. "Something is in our house. I know how it sounds, but I'm not crazy. Something is here." I arrived the next Friday carrying nothing but my travel bag and my Quran. I had no idea what was waiting. The house felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Not obviously, not dramatically, just off. Like a photograph where everything looks normal until you notice the shadows are falling the wrong way. "Assalamu alaikum," I called out, my voice echoing through the entrance hall. Amina appeared from the kitchen, and I barely recognized her. Dark circles under her eyes, hands that trembled slightly. This wasn't stress, this was fear. "Walaikum assalam, bhai, thank you for coming." She hugged me briefly, and I felt how thin she'd become. "Farhan's at work. He'll be back tonight." I set my bag down in the guest room, not the cold back bedroom, I noticed. Amina had given me the room facing the street, with windows that let in afternoon light. "Tell me everything," I said, sitting across from her in the living room. "From the beginning. Don't leave anything out." She told me about the doors, the cold room, the cabinets, but then she told me something else, something that made my skin prickle. "Sometimes," she whispered, leaning forward, "I hear footsteps upstairs, but Bhai, we don't have an upstairs. This is a single-story house." I looked at the ceiling. Solid concrete, no attic space, no second floor. "And last week," she continued, her voice breaking, "I was praying Asr. I was in sajda and I felt—" She stopped, tears welling up. I felt something touch my head, like fingers running through my hair. But when I looked up, no one was there. That's when I knew we weren't dealing with imagination or stress. Something was in this house, something that had no respect for the sanctity of prayer. "Has anyone died here?" I asked. "Do you know the house's history?" Amina shook her head. "The old man who sold it to us just said his family had owned it for generations. He was eager to sell, almost too eager. Red flag." I spent that afternoon walking through the house, reciting Ayat al-Kursi under my breath in each room. The house felt normal until I reached that back bedroom. The temperature dropped immediately, not gradually. The moment I crossed the threshold, it was like stepping into a refrigerator. My breath misted in front of me. The room was empty except for some boxes Amina and Farhan hadn't unpacked. But in the corner, near the window, the dust on the floor showed something strange, a pattern. Circular marks like something had been sitting there, moving in small circles over and over. The dust was disturbed in perfect arcs. "Amina!" I called out. "Has anyone been in this room?" "No," she said from the doorway, refusing to enter. "We don't use it, we keep the door closed." But something used it, something that sat in that corner and waited. That night, I decided to do what my father taught me. When faced with the unseen, bring light, bring the word. I would recite Quran in that room. I had no idea what I was about to unleash. Farhan came home around Maghrib, and I explained my plan over dinner. We'd go into the back bedroom after Isha prayers. I'd recite from the Quran, specifically Surah Al-Baqarah, which the Prophet, peace be upon him, said drives shayateen from homes. "Are you sure that's safe?" Farhan asked. He was trying to sound skeptical, but I saw the fear in his eyes. "If there's something in this house," I said, "it's already unsafe. We need to know what we're dealing with. And if it's a jinn, the Quran will affect it. They can't bear it." After Isha, the three of us gathered outside the back bedroom door. I held my Quran. Amina held her tasbih, fingers moving over the beads nervously. Farhan held a flashlight, though the room's light worked fine. "Bismillah," I whispered, and opened the door. The cold hit us immediately. Amina gasped. Farhan's flashlight beam trembled. We entered slowly. I sat on the floor facing the corner where the dust patterns were. Amina and Farhan sat behind me against the opposite wall. I opened the Quran to Surah Al-Baqarah. "Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim," I began. "Alif, Lam, Mim." The moment, the absolute moment, those words left my mouth. The room changed. The temperature plummeted further. Our breath came out in thick clouds. And then we heard it. A low hum, not mechanical, organic, like something massive was vibrating in the walls around us. I kept reading, "Dalika al-kitabu la rayba fihi." The hum grew louder, angrier. The windows rattled in their frames. "Yusuf Bhai," Amina whispered, terrified. "Maybe we should—" "Don't stop him," Farhan said, though his voice shook. "Keep reading, Yusuf." I continued. Each verse seemed to agitate whatever was in that room. The hum became a vibration we could feel through the floor. The walls creaked. Then at verse 255, Ayat al-Kursi, everything stopped. Total silence. Even the normal house sounds vanished. No hum from the refrigerator in the kitchen, no distant traffic, nothing. In that silence, we heard it clearly. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming from the corner where nothing visible stood. Step, step, step. Something was walking toward us. Amina grabbed my shoulder. "Bhai, there's something." "I see it," Farhan breathed. And we did. Not fully, not clearly. But in the darkness of that corner, where the light didn't quite reach, shadows were moving in a way shadows shouldn't move, coalescing, taking form. A shape, humanoid, but wrong. Too tall, too thin, with eyes that reflected our flashlight beam like an animal's. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "What are you?" The thing didn't answer with words. It answered by slamming every door in the house simultaneously. We ran. I'm not ashamed to admit it. When every door in a house slams at once and something with glowing eyes is forming in front of you, you run. We didn't stop until we were outside in the front garden, breathing hard, looking back at the house. Inside we could hear things moving, furniture scraping, glass breaking, that awful humming sound growing louder and louder. "What did we do?" Amina was crying. "What did we unleash?" "We didn't unleash anything," I said, though my hands were shaking. "It was already here. We just announced ourselves." Farhan was on his phone. "I'm calling Imam Rashid, he deals with this kind of thing." But before he could dial, the noises inside stopped. Sudden silence. Then, from the back bedroom window, we saw it. A light, pale green, pulsing, moving from room to room like someone carrying a lantern. But we'd left all the lights on when we fled. This was something else. "It's searching," I realized. "It's looking for us." We spent that night at my apartment. None of us could sleep. We kept the lights on, the Quran playing on a phone speaker, and barely spoke except to pray. The next morning we returned with Imam Rashid, an elderly man who'd performed dozens of ruqyah sessions. He listened to our story, nodding gravely. "You did the right thing reading Quran," he said, "but you also did something dangerous. When you recite to a jinn that's been hiding, you force it to reveal itself, and if it's been in that house for a long time, it won't leave easily." We entered the house together. In daylight it looked normal. Furniture back in place, no broken glass, everything exactly as it should be. "It cleaned up," Farhan whispered. "Why would it clean up?" Imam Rashid examined the back bedroom carefully. He touched the walls, felt the temperature, studied the corner. Then he found something we'd missed, scratched into the wall, hidden behind where a box had been. Writing. Arabic script, but old, classical. The Imam read it slowly. "This is a claim," he said quietly, "a declaration of ownership. This place belongs to those who were here first. Leave or face the consequences." "Who wrote this?" I asked. "Not written," the Imam corrected. "Scratched, with claws." He showed us the gouges in the plaster. Deep, deliberate. "This jinn has been here a very long time, perhaps since the house was built, and it considers you the intruders." Amina looked like she might collapse. "So what do we do? We can't afford to move. We spent everything on this house." Imam Rashid was quiet for a long moment. "There are only two options, either the jinn leaves or you do, and given what you've told me, the way it reacted to the Quran, I don't think it's going to leave willingly." "Then we force it out," Farhan said, steel in his voice. "This is our home. We have the right to be here. Do you?" The Imam's question hung in the air. "In Islamic law, if a jinn inhabited a place before humans arrived, do we have the right to evict it? It's more complicated than you think." That's when we realized we weren't just dealing with a haunting. We were dealing with a property dispute between dimensions, and the jinn wasn't going to negotiate. Imam Rashid suggested we learn the house's history before attempting another confrontation. "You need to understand what you're dealing with," he said. "Not all jinn are the same. Some are merely protective, others are—" He didn't finish, but his meaning was clear. I spent the next week researching. The land records showed the house was built in 1892 by a British colonial officer. Before that, the land had been agricultural, rice paddies and mango groves. Nothing remarkable. But then I found something in the local library's archive, a newspaper clipping from 1897, 5 years after the house was built. The colonial officer and his family had abandoned the property suddenly. The brief article mentioned unexplained disturbances and native superstitions, but gave no details. The house had sat empty for 3 years before a local merchant bought it. His family lived there for 2 generations without incident. Then it was sold to Farhan Seller's grandfather in 1952. I tracked down the grandson, the old man who'd sold to Farhan and Amina. He lived in Islamabad now. I called him. "I knew you'd call eventually," he said when I explained who I was. His voice was resigned. "Everyone who buys that house calls." "Why didn't you warn them?" I asked, trying to keep the anger from my voice. "Because if I had, they wouldn't have bought it, and I needed to sell. My father warned me never to live there, and I honored that. But I thought, maybe new owners, Muslim owners, young people, maybe it would be different." "What is it?" I demanded. "What's in that house?" He sighed. "My grandfather said that before the British built there, the land was different. There was a small pond, spring-fed, sacred. The villagers said jinn lived in it, water jinn, peaceful ones. When the British drained it to build the house, the jinn were displaced. One of them refused to leave. It stayed bound to the place that had been its home. For over a century? I couldn't believe it. Jinn don't experience time like we do. And this one, my grandfather said it was once peaceful. But anger changes us all. A century of bitterness, of being ignored and dismissed, of watching humans claim its home. It's not peaceful anymore. How did your family live with it?" "They didn't really. They used the house, but they respected the boundaries. The back bedroom, that was its room, they never entered. They left offerings of rosewater and honey once a month. They recited Surah al-Jinn on full moon nights. They coexisted." "And when they stopped?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "My father stopped the offerings in the 1980s, called it superstition. Within a year, my grandmother died in that back bedroom. Heart attack, they said. But she was healthy. After that, no one would sleep in the house. We kept it locked, visited only during the day, until I finally sold it." "You sent my cousin into a trap," I said, disgusted. "I sent them into a test," he corrected. "That jinn isn't evil. It's just tired, hurt, angry. If they can make peace with it, truly respect its presence, it might be possible to live together. But if they treat it as an infestation to be removed—" He paused. "Then I'd advise them to leave, quickly. When I told Amina and Farhan everything, we had to make a decision. Could we share a home with a jinn? Respect its space, honor its claim, treat it as a co-inhabitant rather than an intruder? Islam teaches us that jinn are creations of Allah," Imam Rashid said when we consulted him. "They have rights. But so do you. The question is whether peaceful coexistence is possible." "Let's try," Amina said quietly. "One more time, but we do it right. We approach with respect, not force." so we prepared for a very different kind of encounter. This time we would read Quran not as a weapon, but as an invitation to peace. 3 nights later we returned to the house, me, Amina, Farhan, and Imam Rashid. But this time we came prepared differently. We brought rose water, honey, dates, traditional offerings, and we came with humility. Imam Rashid led us in Maghrib prayer first, all of us together in the living room. Then we approached the back bedroom. The door was closed, though we'd left it open that morning. "A sign," the Imam murmured. "It knows we're here." I knocked. Actually knocked, as if requesting permission to enter someone's private space. "Assalamu alaikum," I said clearly. "We come in peace. We wish to speak." Silence. Then, slowly, the door swung open on its own. The room was freezing as always, but the feeling was different. Not aggressive, more like expectant, waiting. We entered and sat in a semicircle, leaving the corner space, the Jinn's space, empty. Imam Rashid placed the offerings there, a bowl of rosewater, honey, dates. "We acknowledge your presence," the Imam said formally, speaking Arabic. "We acknowledge that you were here first. We come not to drive you out, but to seek understanding and, if Allah wills, peaceful coexistence." Nothing happened at first. Then, gradually, the temperature began to rise. Not warm, but less punishing. And the air in the room changed. The oppressive weight lifted slightly. I opened my Quran, slowly, respectfully. "May I recite?" I asked the empty corner. For a long moment, nothing. Then, a sound, not the angry hum from before, a soft sound, almost like wind through leaves. We took it as assent. I began to recite Surah Ar-Rahman, the Most Merciful. Not Surah Al-Baqarah, which repels and protects. Ar-Rahman, which speaks of Allah's mercy to all creation, humans and jinn alike. Ar-Rahman, He taught the Quran. He created man and taught him eloquent speech. And the sun and moon follow courses exactly computed. As I recited, something remarkable happened. The corner began to shimmer, not threateningly. Like heat waves on a summer road, the air bent and twisted, and slowly, very slowly, a form began to appear. Amina gasped but didn't run. Farhan gripped her hand. Imam Rashid simply watched, calm. The jinn materialized, not fully solid but visible, tall as we'd glimpsed before, but now we could see its features. Humanoid face but with eyes that were too large, too liquid, skin that seemed to shift between textures, at times like water, at times like shadow, at times almost human. It wore what looked like very old clothes, perhaps what people wore when the house was built, and it looked exhausted, ancient and profoundly tired. "You see me," it said. Its voice was strange, like speaking underwater, muffled and echoing simultaneously. "You actually see me?" "We do," Imam Rashid said gently. "And we acknowledge you. What is your name?" The jinn was silent for a long moment. "Names have power. I haven't spoken mine in," it seemed to lose track, "many years." "We are Amina and Farhan," Amina said, her voice trembling but strong. "This is my cousin Yusuf, and this is Imam Rashid. We live here now. We didn't know—" "You didn't know," the jinn interrupted, "because no one remembers. No one cares. The spring is gone. The trees are gone. Everything I knew is gone. Only this corner remains. This one small corner where I can remember what this place was before you covered it in stone." "We're sorry," Farhan said, and he meant it. "We didn't understand. Humans never do." But there was no malice in the jinn's voice, only sadness. "You build and build and build and never think about what you bury." I continued reciting softly, and the jinn turned its strange eyes to me. "Your words," it said. "They hurt, but they also remind." "Remind of what?" I asked. "Of why we believe. I have been angry so long I forgot. But that surah, which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? It speaks to my kind too. We jinn forget that we are also Allah's creation. We forget mercy." Tears, actual tears, began to fall from its eyes. They hit the floor and evaporated instantly, leaving tiny scorch marks. "I am tired," it whispered. "So tired of anger, so tired of loneliness. But this is my home, the only home I have left." And in that moment, we understood. This wasn't about driving anything out or claiming victory. This was about two parties, human and jinn, who both had legitimate claims, both had suffered, both needed grace. "Then let us share it," Amina said softly. "This home. We won't disturb this room. We'll respect your space, and maybe we don't have to be enemies." The jinn looked at her for a long moment. You would do this, knowing what I am. You are a creation of Allah, Imam Rashid said firmly, as are we, and Allah commands us to deal justly with all his creation. The jinn lowered its head. I don't remember the last time someone spoke to me with respect, with kindness. Then let's start now, Farhan said. The jinn slowly reached out, its hand still somewhat translucent, and touched the bowl of rose water. It shimmered, rippled, and smiled. A strange smile, but genuine. Very well, it said quietly. I will try. I will try to be the guardian I once was, not the angry spirit I became. But you must keep your word. We will, we said together. The jinn began to fade then, not vanishing but becoming less visible, retreating to its corner. But before it disappeared completely, it said one more thing. My name is Marjan. I was a guardian of the spring. Thank you for remembering that I have a name. The next few weeks were a test, unlike any I'd experienced. We had made an agreement, but living it was different from promising it. Amina and Farhan kept their word about the back bedroom. They didn't enter. They left offerings of rosewater and honey monthly as the old family had done. They recited Surah al-Jinn on full moon nights, standing outside the closed door. But the house still felt strange, not threatening but constantly aware, like living with someone who's always watching, always present, never quite relaxing. Small incidents continued, not malicious, but unsettling. Amina would be cooking and feel that familiar presence behind her, but when she turned, nothing. Farhan would hear footsteps at night, soft padding sounds moving through rooms. Is it Marjan? Amina asked me one afternoon. I'd been staying with them to help with the transition. Or are we imagining things because we know it's here? Does it matter? I asked. You feel observed because you are. Marjan is part of this house. You can't pretend otherwise. The real test came a month in. Shamina's sister Zainab came to visit. She was skeptical, modern, didn't believe in superstitious nonsense, as she called it. You're letting one room sit empty because of a ghost story, she laughed when Amina explained. That's ridiculous. Let me prove there's nothing there. Zainab, please don't, Amina started. But Zainab was already walking toward the back bedroom, hand reaching for the doorknob. Zainab, stop! Farhan shouted. Too late. She opened the door and stepped inside. The temperature drop was instantaneous. Zainab gasped, her breath misting. And then we all heard it, a low warning sound, not words. A growl that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Get out, I said urgently. Zainab, back away slowly. But Zainab was frozen, staring at the corner. Something's... The air in the room began to shimmer, and Marjan's form started materializing, but different than before. Angular, aggressive, the peaceful sadness replaced by defensive anger. Have you promised? Marjan's voice thundered, shaking the windows. You said this space was mine. She didn't know, Amina cried, stepping into the doorway. Marjan, please. She's my sister. She didn't understand the agreement. Ignorance is no excuse. The jinn's form grew darker, more solid, more threatening. How many times will humans break their word? How many times will you push and push until I... Stop! I started reciting Ayat al-Kursi, not to attack, but to establish spiritual boundary, to demand clarity. Marjan recoiled, hissing, You dare! We made an agreement! I shouted over the words of the verse. And we're keeping it. This was an accident. She will leave. Now! Farhan grabbed Zainab and pulled her out of the room, slamming the door behind them. Zainab collapsed in the hallway sobbing, mumbling about eyes and shadows and cold. Inside the room, we heard things crashing, the sound of furniture being hurled against walls, furniture that didn't exist. Marjan's rage unleashed. Imam Rashid, who had come for a follow-up visit that day, stepped to the door. Marjan, he called calmly, guardian of the spring, believer in Allah, hear me. The crashing stopped. You have every right to be angry, the Imam continued. Your space was violated. But look at the intent. This woman didn't know. She meant no disrespect. Is your anger righteous or is it old wounds reopening? Silence. Long, tense silence. Then quietly, old wounds. Always old wounds. Then let us heal them properly, the Imam said. Not with more anger, not with more barriers, but with patience and mutual understanding. You are tired of fighting. So are they. Peace is harder than war, but it's also more worthy of Allah's creation. The door opened slowly. Marjan stood there, visible, looking exhausted again. I am trying, it said, its voice small and broken. But a century of anger doesn't disappear in a month. We know, Amina said gently. We're all trying, but we need your patience too. We need you to remember that we're also learning. This is new for us. Marjan looked at each of us in turn, and then at Zainab, still shaking on the floor. I am sorry, it said to her. I frightened you. That was excessive. Zainab couldn't speak, just nodded frantically. But the door stays closed, Marjan added firmly. That must be respected. It will be, Farhan promised. We'll put a lock on it. Only we have the key, and we'll explain to anyone who visits. Marjan retreated back into its room, the door closing softly. We sat in the hallway, processing what had just happened. The agreement had been tested, had nearly broken, but ultimately held. Barely. This is our life now, Amina said quietly. Negotiating with the unseen, walking on eggshells in our own home. No, Imam Rashid corrected. This is your life now, sharing space with another of Allah's creation. It's not easy, but it's also not impossible. And perhaps there's wisdom in it we haven't yet understood. He was right, but the wisdom would come at a cost none of us anticipated. 2 months after Zainab's incident, something shifted in the house. Marjan became more present, not threatening, but visible. We'd see its silhouette in doorways at dusk, hear its voice, faint like a distant conversation, speaking what sounded like prayers in old Arabic. It was participating, coexisting, almost like a very shy, very unusual roommate. Then came the night that changed everything. It was 2 a.m. when Amina shook me awake. I'd been sleeping in the guest room, still helping them adjust. Yusuf, wake up, something's wrong. I sat up immediately. Marjan? No, it's... Come see. In the living room, Farhan stood at the window, looking out at the street. There's someone out there, he said. 3 men. They've been standing across the street for 20 minutes, just watching the house. I looked. 3 figures, shrouded in darkness despite the streetlight. Something about them felt wrong. Not their appearance. I couldn't see them clearly enough for that. But the way they stood, too still, too focused. Then we heard it. Marjan's voice, urgent, coming from everywhere at once. Get away from the windows, now! We dropped down just as something hit the front door. Hard. A boom that shook the frame. Then another, and another. Someone was trying to break in. What's happening? Amina cried. Marjan materialized in the corner of the room, more solid than we'd ever seen it. They've come for me, it said. Other Jinn. Those who believe I've betrayed our kind by living with humans peacefully. They mean to drive me out, and to harm you for harboring me. Another thunderous impact on the door. The wood began to splinter. What do we do? Farhan's voice was high with panic. You run, Marjan said simply. Out the back. This is not your fight. Like hell it isn't, I said, surprising myself. This is their home. You're under their protection. That means we defend you. Marjan looked at me with those liquid alien eyes. You would fight Jinn? For me? You're our responsibility, Amina said, standing up. Our guest, Your what? Marjan asked softly. Our friend, Amina finished. The word hung in the air for a moment. Then the front door exploded inward. 3 Jinn entered, but these were nothing like Marjan. Where Marjan was water and shadow, they were fire and smoke. Their eyes burned red. Their forms flickered between human and something distinctly not, with too many joints, too many angles. Marjan al-Ma, the leader spoke, its voice like crackling flame. You have violated the old laws. You have submitted to humans. You have forsaken your kind. I have forsaken nothing, Marjan said, stepping forward to shield us. I have chosen peace over pride. That is not submission, that is wisdom. It is weakness. The fire Jinn lunged forward. I did the only thing I could think of. I opened my Quran and began to recite at the top of my voice, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. The fire Jinn shrieked and recoiled, not from fear, but from pain. The words burned them, as surely as they burned. Keep reading, Marjan shouted, its own form growing, expanding, filling the room with cool mist that battled against the invading heat. Don't stop. Farhan grabbed his phone and started playing Surah Al-Baqarah at full volume. Amina joined me in recitation, her voice strong despite her fear. The battle that followed was like nothing I can adequately describe. Jinn fighting Jinn in our dimension, fire against water, heat against cold, screams that sounded like tearing metal, and prayers recited in languages we couldn't identify. The fire Jinn attacked not just Marjan, but us. One lunged at Farhan, claws extended. Marjan intercepted it and they crashed through furniture. leaving scorch marks and pools of water in their wake. "You defend humans?" another fire Jinn hissed. "You have truly fallen." "I defend those who showed me mercy," Marjan roared back. "Something you have forgotten." The leader of the fire Jinn turned its burning gaze on me. "You, human, you think your words protect you?" It moved faster than I could track, suddenly in front of me, its heat intense enough to make my skin blister. Its hand reached for my throat, and Marjan crashed into it from the side, tackling it away from me. They tumbled through the wall, literally through it, leaving a hole, and their battle continued in the front yard. We ran after them. Outside, the street was chaos. The three fire Jinn were coordinated, attacking Marjan from multiple angles. Marjan was strong, but outnumbered. "We have to help," Amina cried. "How?" Farhan shouted back. "We're human. We can't—" But I remembered something Imam Rashid had told us. The greatest weapon against spiritual darkness is not strength, but faith made manifest. "Form a circle," I commanded, "around Marjan, now." We ran into the midst of the battle, absolutely insane, but we did it. We formed a protective circle around Marjan, our backs to it, facing outward toward the fire Jinn, and we prayed, all three of us, every protective verse we knew, at the top of our lungs. The effect was immediate. The fire Jinn couldn't cross the line of our circle. Our faith, imperfect, trembling, terrified faith, created a barrier they couldn't breach. "You see," Marjan's voice came from behind us, weak but triumphant. "This is why I chose peace. Because these humans, fragile and brief as they are, have power you've forgotten. The power of mercy, of faith, of choosing love over hate." The leader of the fire Jinn hissed. "This isn't over, Marjan. The old laws were made when there was only hate between our kinds." Marjan stood leaning against me for support. I felt its weight, cold and heavy and real. "But times change. We can change. I have changed." For a long moment, the fire Jinn just stared. Then, one by one, they began to dissipate, fading back into smoke and embers. "You'll regret this alliance," the leader said as it vanished. "Both of you." Then they were gone. The street was empty, normal, as if nothing had happened, except for the hole in our wall and the burn marks on the pavement. We stood there, breathing hard, supporting Marjan, who was barely maintaining form. "Thank you," it whispered. "You could have run, should have run, but you stood with me. You're one of us now," Farhan said simply. "That's what you do for family." Marjan made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. "Family. I haven't had that word apply to me in—" It couldn't finish. We helped it back into the house, back to its room. It collapsed in its corner, its form barely visible, exhausted beyond measure. "Will they come back?" Amina asked. "Maybe," Marjan murmured. "But now they know you'll fight. That changes things. No one attacks a house defended by both humans and Jinn in unity. It's too—" It yawned, an unsettlingly human gesture from such an inhuman face. Too rare, too strange. It makes them uncertain, and uncertainty creates space for peace. As we left its room, closing the door gently, we heard it say one more thing. "I was wrong to be angry at you for taking my spring. You've given me something better, something I thought I'd lost forever." "What?" I asked. "Purpose." Word spread. I don't know how, whether the fire Jinn talked or whether other spiritual beings witnessed the fight, but within weeks our house became known. The House of Two Worlds, some called it. The place where the veil is thin, where humans and Jinn walk together. Imam Rashid visited frequently, fascinated and slightly disturbed. "This is unprecedented," he said one afternoon, sipping chai in our living room, while Marjan's shadow flickered in the hallway. It had started moving through the house more freely, no longer confined to just its room. "In all my years, I've never seen a coexistence like this." "Is it wrong?" Amina asked. "Islamically, I mean. Are we doing something forbidden?" The Imam considered carefully. "The Quran acknowledges Jinn as believers or disbelievers, just like humans. It warns us about their tricks, but doesn't forbid peaceful interaction. The Prophet himself is reported to have led Jinn in prayer. So no, I don't think this is forbidden. It's just extremely rare." Life settled into a new rhythm. Strange, but manageable. Marjan became part of our household in ways we never anticipated. It would wake Amina for Fajr if she overslept, a gentle, cool breeze across her face. It kept the house maintained. Pipes never leaked, foundation never cracked. Electrical issues somehow resolved themselves overnight. In return, Amina would leave small offerings of rosewater, and we'd recite Quran on Friday nights. always including Surah Ar-Rahman, Marjan's favorite. It reminds me that mercy exists, it told us once, that Allah is merciful to all creation, not just humans. I need that reminder, but there were complications. When friends visited, they felt the presence. Some were accepting, others disturbed. 2 of Farhan's cousins refused to ever return after seeing shadows move wrong. Zainab, after her initial terror, became strangely fascinated. She started researching Jinn in Islamic tradition, asking Marjan questions through the closed door of its room. What was life like before humans built cities? She asked one evening. Marjan's voice drifted out dreamlike, vast, empty. We moved through the world without obstacles. We had kingdoms you never knew existed, built in places humans couldn't see. We watched your kind emerge, small and scared, making fire and telling stories. We thought you were amusing, temporary. We didn't realize you would inherit the earth. Do you resent us? Zainab asked. Long pause. I did, for a very long time. But resentment is exhausting, and it's lonely. I'd rather have this, strange as it is, than spend another century alone with my anger. The real test came 6 months in, when Amina became pregnant. She was terrified. Is it safe? She asked Imam Rashid, me, anyone who would listen. Can I raise a child in a house with a jinn? Marjan answered that itself. One evening, when Amina was sitting in the garden, worried and praying, Marjan materialized beside her. She didn't startle anymore. I would never harm your child, Marjan said softly. Children are precious, sacred. I may have forgotten much, but I remember that. Your child will grow up with protection most humans never have. I give you my word. As a guardian, as a believer, I will watch over your family. Amina cried. Thank you, she whispered. No, Marjan replied. Thank you for giving me a reason to be a guardian again instead of just a bitter spirit haunting an empty room. When baby Musa was born, something incredible happened. The first night home from the hospital, Amina was exhausted, sleeping deeply. Musa woke crying at 3 a.m., that terrible newborn wail. Before Farhan could fully wake up, they heard it, a soft humming sound, melodic, soothing. They rushed to Musa's room and found the baby calm, staring at the corner where a faint, shimmering form hovered, humming an old lullaby, words in Arabic, but dialect so ancient even Imam Rashid couldn't fully translate it later. Marjan, Farhan whispered. Shh, the jinn whispered back. He was scared. The world is very loud for new souls. I'm just helping him feel safe. From that night on, Musa never cried at night. Marjan would hum its ancient lullaby, and the baby would sleep peacefully. Amina and Farhan, exhausted new parents, were grateful beyond words. As Musa grew, he became the bridge between worlds in ways we adults never could. At 2 years old, he'd have full conversations with Maji, his name for Marjan, babbling in toddler speak, while Marjan responded in patient, measured tones. He sees me clearly, Marjan told us once, wonder in its voice. Children can, before the world teaches them not to. He doesn't see a monster. He just sees me, Maji, his friend. I visited less frequently as years passed, but every time I came, I was struck by how normal it all seemed. A family living their life, with an ancient water jinn as an honorary member. Bizarre, yes, but also somehow right. Do you ever regret not filling in the well? I asked Farhan one afternoon, watching Musa play in the garden while Marjan's shadow played with him, making shapes against the wall that made the boy giggle. Farhan was quiet for a moment. I regret that we almost made a terrible mistake, that we almost destroyed something irreplaceable out of ignorance and fear, but regret the choice to stay, to make peace. Never. He paused, then added, Marjan saved Musa's life last month. He almost pulled a pot of boiling water off the stove. I was on the phone. Amina was in the bathroom, but Marjan was watching. It moved the pot before Musa could reach it. My son is alive because we chose mercy over fear 3 years ago. That's the lesson, isn't it? I said. Fear divides. Mercy unites, even across impossible boundaries. Especially across impossible boundaries, Farhan corrected. 5 years have passed since that first night when I opened the Quran in the back bedroom. The house in Lahore has become something of a quiet legend in certain circles. Those who believe, those who've experienced the unexplainable, those who understand that reality is larger than what we see. Marjan is no longer confined to the back bedroom. That room remains its primary space, its sanctuary, but it moves through the entire house now. Its presence is gentle, protective, almost domestic. Musa is 5 years old now, and his relationship with Marjan is the most natural thing in the world to him. They play games. Marjan makes shapes with water drops, creates cool breezes that make leaves dance, tells stories of the old world in simple words Musa can understand. Maji says there used to be elephants in this valley, Musa announced at dinner one night. Big elephants with tusks like the moon. That's true, Imam Rashid confirmed. He's become a regular dinner guest. Thousands of years ago, this region had different wildlife. Marjan would remember. Amina is pregnant with their second child. This time, there's no fear, just acceptance. Their children will grow up with something most humans never experience, proof that the unseen world is real and that mercy transcends species. The house has changed physically too. The back bedroom, with our agreement, has been renovated. We built a small fountain in the corner, Marjan's corner, with water that flows continuously, cool and pure. It's the Jinn's physical anchor point, the place where it can rest and regenerate. Around the fountain, we've created a small prayer space with beautiful calligraphy of Surah Ar-Rahman on the walls. It's become a place of meditation for the whole family, and for Marjan. I pray here, Marjan told us once. In this corner, with these words around me, I remember who I am. Not just a guardian of a lost spring, but a creation of Allah with purpose and dignity. Other families have reached out, tentatively, through Imam Rashid. Others who have jinn in their homes, who live in fear or conflict. Can you teach us, they ask, how you made peace? And so Amina, Farhan and I, with Marjan's permission, have started sharing the story. Not for fame, not for money, but because peace is rare enough that when you find it, you have an obligation to share how. The principles are simple, though the practice is hard. Acknowledgement. Don't deny what you sense. If something is there, recognize it. Respect. Beings that existed before you have rights. Space that isn't yours shouldn't be violated. Communication. Talk. Even if you don't hear answers immediately, speak with respect. Boundaries. Clear agreements prevent conflict. What's theirs, what's yours, what's shared, define it. Faith. Let Quran be a bridge, not a weapon. Recite not to banish, but to create sacred space where mercy can exist, but mostly approach with humility. We are not the only intelligent life in Allah's creation. The sooner we accept that, the sooner we can move from fear to coexistence. Marjan has taught us as much as we've taught it, about patience, about forgiveness, about how isolation breeds anger and connection breeds peace. I was dying, Marjan told us on the 5th anniversary of our agreement. Not physically. Jinn don't die easily, but spiritually. My soul was withering from loneliness and rage. You didn't just give me a home. You gave me back my purpose, my identity, my hope. You've given us just as much, Amina replied. You've shown us that Allah's mercy is bigger than we imagined, that peace is possible even when it seems impossible. Last month, something extraordinary happened. Another jinn appeared in the garden, a fire jinn, like those who attacked years ago. We were immediately on guard, but this one came peacefully, materializing in a respectful distance, making no threatening moves. I seek Marjan al-Ma, it said in that crackling voice. Marjan appeared, cautious. I know you. You were with those who attacked. I was, the fire jinn admitted. I came to say we were wrong. What you've built here, this peace, it's spreading. Others speak of it. Some with mockery, but many with hope, with curiosity. We've lived in such isolation from humans for so long, such mutual fear and hatred, seeing that another way is possible. It paused, then said the words I'll never forget. Can you teach us how you did this? Marjan looked at us, and we nodded. We can try, it said, but it requires something difficult from both sides. What? The fire jinn asked. Humility, the willingness to admit you might have been wrong. Can your kind manage that? The fire jinn considered, then said, if you could, perhaps we can too. That conversation led to something unprecedented, a gathering. 6 jinn, different types, from different territories, meeting with 6 human families, all with Imam Rashid mediating, all of us trying to find ways to coexist peacefully. It's early days. Progress is slow. There are misunderstandings, conflicts, setbacks. But it's happening. Walls built over centuries of mutual fear are beginning to crack. This is your legacy, I told Marjan last week. Not just surviving, but showing others how to bridge worlds. Marjan was quiet for a long time. Then, I never wanted to be important. I just wanted my spring back, my home, my peace. But perhaps this is better. Perhaps this is what Allah intended when He brought you to this house 5 years ago. Do you believe that? I asked. That this was all intended? I believe, Marjan said slowly, that Allah works in ways we don't expect, that mercy can enter through the smallest cracks, and that sometimes what looks like tragedy, a lost spring, a century of loneliness, is actually preparation for something greater. Musa ran into the room then, laughing, chased by a breeze that was definitely Marjan playing with him. "Marji, tell me the elephant story again," he demanded. And Marjan did, its ancient voice mixing with a child's laughter, in a house where the impossible had become daily life, where fear had transformed into family, where the veil between worlds was thin enough to hold hands across it. This is our normal now. Strange, miraculous, imperfect, but ours. So what did the Jinn do when we opened the Quran in front of him? It revealed itself, but not because the Quran forced it, because the Quran reminded it of who it was. Not a monster to be feared, but a creation of Allah, deserving of mercy and capable of mercy in return. The lesson Marjan taught us is one every Muslim needs to understand. The unseen world is real. Jinn exist. They are not folklore, not superstition, not metaphor. They are beings created by Allah, mentioned in His book, living alongside us in dimensions we can't fully perceive, and like humans, they can be good or evil, patient or angry, generous or bitter. What they become depends partly on how we treat them. When we approach the unseen with arrogance, assuming everything must bend to our will, that we alone have rights to space and existence, we create enemies. But when we approach with humility, recognizing that Allah's creation is vast and varied, we create the possibility of peace. The Quran is powerful. Its words affect Jinn as surely as they affect us, but that power can be wielded as a weapon or as a bridge. We chose bridge. And in doing so, we transform not just Marjan's existence but our own. We learned that our faith is bigger than we thought, that mercy is more powerful than force, that coexistence is possible even when everything in our culture and history tells us it's not. I want you to understand something crucial. If you're experiencing something unexplainable in your home, sounds, sights, feelings of presence, don't immediately assume it's malicious. Don't rush to cleanse or exorcise. First, try respect, try acknowledgement, try prayer not as warfare but as invitation to peace. Read Quran, specifically Surah Ar-Rahman. Let its words of mercy fill your space. Offer that mercy to whatever shares your space. You might be surprised by the response. But, and this is critical, do this with knowledge. Consult scholars. Work with people who understand both the spiritual and the practical. Don't go into these situations unprepared or arrogant. Marjan was fortunate to be a believing Jinn, one who remembered Allah and could respond to His words. Not all Jinn are. Some are shayateen, truly malicious entities that mean only harm. Discernment is essential, but in our rush to protect ourselves, we've forgotten that protection can sometimes look like peace treaties rather than warfare. Before I end this, I want you to do something. Look around your life, not just your physical space, but your spiritual life. What have you been treating as an enemy that might actually be something else? What fear have you been feeding that might transform into understanding if you approached it differently? The unseen world is watching us just as much as we're watching it. How we treat what we cannot see reveals who we truly are. Are we people of fear or faith, of violence or mercy, of walls or bridges? Musa is 7 now. Yesterday I asked him if he was scared of Marji. He looked at me like I was crazy. Why would I be scared of Marji, he asked. Marji is family. From the mouths of children, truth. This boy has never known a world where humans and Jinn can't coexist. To him, it's the most natural thing in the world. Perhaps that's what paradise looks like. Not the absence of the other, but the acceptance of it. Subscribe to this channel if you want more stories that challenge how you see the world. Leave a comment telling me, have you ever experienced something unexplainable? Something that made you question what's real? And how did you respond? With fear or with faith? Marjan still lives in that house in Lahore, still hums ancient lullabies to the children, still keeps the water pure and the foundation strong, still prays in the corner with Surah Ar-Rahman on the walls around it, and every day it proves that mercy transcends worlds. The next time you recite Quran, really listen. Listen not just with your ears but with your heart, because you never know who else is listening, who else needs to hear those words of mercy, who else is waiting, hoping that maybe, just maybe, peace is possible, even across impossible boundaries, even between worlds, even when everything tells you it can't be done. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you all, human and jinn alike.